All right, welcome everybody to the Filmmakers Live. This is our podcast where we talk to producers and talk about the business side of filmmaking. I always like to say that I teach things that filmmakers don't want to know, which is all the things about the business and that side of things. And but I do believe very fundamentally that filmmakers need to learn these skills. So I'm extremely honored today to have Jonathan Lia with us. And Jonathan is very well known in the industry and has been producing for a long time with some of the most notable names in our culture, I would say. Beyonce, Scarlett Johansson, Kanye West. These are just figures that loom very, very, very large. But we are going to start long before his work with those luminaries. And I always like to start very much at the beginning, and I never know what the answer to this question is going to be. But my first question, Jonathan, is when did you first know you were a filmmaker?
I first knew that I wanted to get into filmmaking pretty early because I was torn in what I wanted to do with my life. And on one hand, I wanted to be a fine artist, and on the other hand, I was very interested in the world of business. And so I think I just kind of looked at film as art business and thought that maybe that was the place for me. And so I started, I met somebody, I didn't know anybody in the industry. And I met somebody who worked at a small production company that was an advertising agency and a production company. And they gave me an opportunity to go work for free as a PA on a commercial shoot. I was 17 and I never looked back.
That's really awesome. Do you know why it was? Because I think it's rare. I haven't heard artists say, "Oh, I knew early on that I wanted to be involved in business." Do you know where that came from?
I think it came from that I was a very good student and I was a pretty good painter. And so I actually finished high school in 3 years. And so that forced me to kind of think a little early as far as what I was going to do and what my
Mhm.
next step was going to be. And so that's what compelled me to go into that space. But I think it really came down to the question of, did I want to work to live or live to work? Did I want to work 5 days for those 2 days every week? Or did I want to jump into something that I would be so passionate about that I would be okay to work every day?
Every
And
day, all day.
so, yeah, so that's what I picked, for better or for worse.
Yeah, yeah. And so you started out as a painter. How did that art form translate into film for you? How did it become a time-based art?
Well, I think it's just I was very drawn to the visual arts. I'm a visual person. That's how I interpret the world around me. And so that's what, it felt, I could see the similarities in film and in the art world. And I still do. And I think that
Mhm.
that is part of what makes this career so satisfying.
Hmm. Hmm. And so when you got that opportunity to work for free as a
Yeah.
PA, I was given an opportunity to work for free and I actually couldn't afford to do it. And I think that's one of my motivations when I work with filmmakers to help them on the money side of things because I had to miss an opportunity because I couldn't afford to take a 3 month no paid job and I didn't have, family supporting me or anything in any way. So I feel as though, I missed an opportunity just for the sake of a little bit of money, you know? And
Yeah, I felt that throughout my career. Because I couldn't afford to do it either. Um, luckily it was only a 2 day shoot.
oh, okay.
But as time went on and started working more and more, opportunities would come along that were very tempting when you're flat broke to go work for some company, you know, for a decent salary. And over I would turn those down, because I didn't think the opportunity was going to push my career forward. So instead of taking that salary job, I would, you know, go spend my time making short films and music videos that had no budgets. And ultimately it paid off because those projects did lead me to something more.
Right. Would you say that you are one of the filmmakers whose career really came out of music videos? Because that is a career path. It's not one I'm as familiar with. I'm used to kind of short films, you know, feature films, but music videos is a very tried and true path for a lot of filmmakers. Would you say that was really what happened for you?
Yeah, I mean, I actually started in commercials and then
Uh,
was such a fan of music that very early I tried very hard to get into the music video space. There's not as many opportunities, I don't think, today as there were back then in music videos. And even back then, I felt like I kind of had missed the boat of the heyday of that genre,
uh,
when MTV was still on the uh,
right.
playing music videos. But there's quite a few people who have come through that way and have found careers in film after being in any kind of short form, whether that's the commercial space or the music video space. Because I think the advantage to that, to working in short form, is that we're constantly in that space, building something up, doing it, tearing it all down over and over again on very quick turnaround. Whereas somebody who comes up maybe in a more traditional feature film space, you know, it could be years between films. You know, you might not be on set for a year, 3 years in between movies. So, you know, having that background in production, I think, has been invaluable for me.
Mm. And so you were working on both commercials and music videos at the same time. And so I know that branding is going to become a big part of your story, but so
I think you froze for a moment, Joanne. We'll give her a moment to come back here.
in those early days,
Is it okay to ask a question?
Yeah, by all means. I think while we wait for, you know, I
when
think
what
No,
uh,
I think she will take the questions
what were some
later.
of the memories you have about your early days in really hoping that wasn't going to happen today? I am so sorry. Am I back yet?
we hear you. Yeah,
Yes,
we
you
hear
are.
you.
Well, if she's having trouble coming on, I put a question on the side. In the music video space, was it the actual work you think that opened the doors, or was it the networking within the music video sphere? Some of my friends did music videos and they actually made commercials and did very well. They did the movie Drum Roll. We went to high school together.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but he
Love
did
that
music
movie.
videos first.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, was it the networking or was it the fact that they loved his music videos?
I think it's both. I think, you know, the reality is some of the people that I've worked with in that space, I've continued to work with in the space I'm in now. Some people I've brought from that space into more of the feature film TV space. Um, but more importantly, I would say, is the experience of making things, of building things, of just being on set and creating. And because, you know, you're running through basically a miniature timeline of a feature film. You still have to do all the prep and location scouting and casting. You still have to go shoot it. And then you also have the whole gamut of post-production processes that you have to go through. So, having done that over and over again and learning new tricks and having the opportunity to try things in that format has really helped me a lot, I think, in the feature film space.
Thank you so much, Paris, for coming in while I was frozen. Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to ask if you have any memories from those music video days that stood out, that like something that made a big difference or a big experience in the music video world.
Yeah, I think, just the necessity being the mother of invention, I would say. I remember there was a music video we were putting together, and it had a very limited budget. And the concept was the video was going to look like a trailer for a movie from the 70s. And so it was very important to the filmmaker that it have that filmic look and that it look like film, it feel like film with scratches and, kind of like somebody had just discovered this. And we didn't have the money for that at all. And we didn't have the money for kind of anything. But we ended up, instead of hiring a production designer, we went to the prop house ourselves, just the director and I, and we picked out all the props, and we got a couple of people, and we went to the desert. And since we couldn't afford film cameras, we ended up shooting on really cheap digital cameras and shot the whole video like that. And then after we were done, we edited on that, and we couldn't even afford to rent a camera for a day. So we took our final edit and a projector, just a little home projector, into one of the camera houses. And they let us just set up off to the side somewhere, and we projected our edit, and we filmed the projection on film. And then we processed that. And then once we had it processed, we took the spool and unspooled it in the parking lot of a color correction place. And it looks like it was shot on film. And so it was, we got the result that we wanted, but we didn't necessarily have to go the expensive path to get there. And I think, this day and age, and I have two production companies. I have one that does a lot of TV commercials and music related content. And then another one that is purely focused on film and television. And what I tell a lot of my young producers at our commercial company is, there's no excuse. Like this right here has, more pixels and better quality than anything I ever had in college. Like go shoot something, shoot it on your phone. There's great small ways to make something look interesting. I've directed a bunch of music videos too, and like something like this, like I would shoot through this probably look amazing.
Yeah.
Find all those little things and experiment and play, but you don't need the $50,000 camera. It's not about that. It's about connecting with an audience, and that's going to come through performance. It's going to come through story, and those things aren't contingent on 4K or 8K or whatever kind of lens or anything. I mean, those things can help you tell a specific story, but they're like paintbrushes, and this is also a paintbrush, and so you can paint something with it.
So I read that in part of your journey was that the place I think that you PA'd for, that you eventually were running that company. So when was that, when you first were able to bring those two sides of the artist and the business together during that period?
Yeah, around that time. And I think that was one example. Also, I was in college at the time. I was taking all my classes at night so that I could continue to try and look for opportunities to grow as a filmmaker in the day. And I didn't come from money, but a lot of the kids I went to school with had money. And so somebody would get a couple $1,000s to do their school project, and we just thought that was all the money in the world. And
Yes.
I remember one time, and by default, I would end up being the producer because I was good at putting all the pieces together. And at one time, somebody had $10,000. I thought, holy cow, we can. So 5 of us flew to Los Angeles. We'd never been there before. We rented 2 trucks. One we filled with camera equipment and the other with props and lights. And we drove those trucks into Mexico. And we shot for 2 weeks on film and made a short film, 25 minutes, and it came out really great. And I was the producer and the assistant director and the production designer, and you just go and do it. But I think with anything, knowledge is the key, and having as much understanding about all the different facets of filmmaking is really powerful, especially whether you want to be a producer or you want to be a director. Having the information and the knowledge about how these cameras work and what you can achieve with them, that enables you to have really thoughtful things to say to a cinematographer, or maybe you're the cinematographer too.
Right.
And you can go experiment and find these things out. The same with the editing software. Yesterday morning, I spent an hour and a half in a seminar on film accounting software. And at this stage, I'm not touching the film accounting software, but I want to know everything I possibly can about it so that I can talk to the people who do.
Yes.
And I can, speak intelligently with them. And so I think coming up, I jumped around. I was in art department and then became a production designer. I was in camera department and became a DP. I've done almost every job on set at one time or another. And that experience has enabled me to be, I think, a stronger producer today, because I can talk to all the department heads about what they're doing, and I have a background in that as well. So those conversations are more fruitful.
I love the story of driving to Mexico, into the desert. In my first film class, I was always picked as the DP. And I think it was because for some reason I was able to hold the camera more still than everybody else. I think those were my qualifications.
That's great.
So which path went first? Because I know still today you have the business with the commercials and the music videos and the film. Which one came first? Which one took off first?
The
Or maybe they
commercial.
didn't. Oh, the
The
commercial.
commercial company took off first. And at the time I was really back and forth between New York and Los Angeles a lot, working. I had done a short film. It was a student at Columbia. They have a big competition every year, international competition, where they rip the cover pages off the scripts. So nobody knows what the name of the script is or who wrote it. So it kind of eliminates politics, and they just number them. And the kid who won that particular year, the prize was a camera package and a couple bucks, and one of the professors was going to help out. And so we cut down the feature script to a short, and we found somebody who put a little bit of money into it, and went and shot it in Las Vegas. And one of the professor that was assigned to us, or who's a producer on the project as well, a guy named Kit Carson, who wrote Paris, Texas, and the remake of Breathless, and he was a producer on Bottle Rocket, which was Wes Anderson's first movie. And I remember back then asking him about Los Angeles and should I go? Do I need to go? When do I go? And his advice to me was, Jonathan, you go to Los Angeles when you're invited.
Oh,
And that was really good advice in hindsight, because eventually I did get invited to go produce for something for someone out there. But I was there with a purpose, and I think that purpose gave me a lot of direction and guidance in the industry out there.
right. Rather than just going and hoping something is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what happened though is that half my work was in LA and half my work was in New York. And all of a sudden I found myself a single dad with primary custody of an infant, and I couldn't go to LA anymore. And so I actually started my commercial company with one partner in New York and one in Los Angeles, so that I wouldn't give away half my business.
Right.
And so it's that child is now 15 years old. So
Fantastic. That's my
yeah, and the
that's my
company's still
favorite.
going.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's my favorite age, 15.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah,
Yeah, because
living his best life.
yeah, people think that the teens are tough, but those are my favorites. So, when did you finally find yourself making your first feature film?
I forget what year it was, but there was one year I tried to make one New Year's resolution every year. I try to keep it to one, and I try to make good on it. And one year I said, okay, this year I'm gonna make a movie. And it was a while ago. But I found a film. They needed a line producer. They had no money. Or they ended up pulling together $500,000. So it was pretty
That's
significant actually.
yeah.
But we shot for 6 weeks in New York and 1 week in Venice, Italy. And I was the producer, the line producer, the first AD, and the production manager. So it was a DGA job, so they had to have that position. And it was just a great experience. And coming from short form, I remember the realization after we picked up our camera that, oh wow, we don't have to return this for weeks, which I wasn't used to, because we're used to 1, 2, 3 day shoots. So
Right.
I found that very liberating actually, that we could do all the prep and then just have this whole, great window of weeks to go film something. And then after that, over the years, I've produced, some maybe more artful feature films like Beyonce's Lemonade. I did a couple short films with Kanye, one called Runaway.
I feel as though we just skipped something.
Okay.
So
Oh, sure.
how did you become involved with Kanye and Beyonce? How did that happen? Because I'm sort of still seeing you as being this very young person, this very young dad, and then
Sure.
I mean, Beyonce wasn't always Beyonce, I guess, but
She kind of was. I think I first worked with her in 2011.
uh-huh.
And so that was, my son was born in 2010. So it
Oh,
was pretty close on the heels of that.
yeah. Where was she at in her career in 2011? I
She
can't.
was a solo artist. It was a music video called The Best Thing I Never Had. And I think Jay's in it too.
Mm,
Um, but I think what brought me into working with artists like that is I really had started to just produce anything I could get my hands on. And sometimes that I'd make money doing that, sometimes I wouldn't. I had no safety net. I don't come from money. I I used to always know I was in trouble when I ran out of quarters. That's when I knew I had to call somebody.
oh wow,
Um,
I love that image, Jonathan. I
yeah.
love I actually made a short film a certain point, and I can't even remember what I called it, but it was about you see this looks like a very happy family at a cafe, and then you hear the woman asking her husband for a couple of quarters, and she goes out to a phone booth when there used to be phones. She goes outside to this phone, and we see her pretend to make a phone call and keep the quarters. And then she goes to a train station and hands over all the quarters to take her and her son on a train and get out.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's clever. Nice.
Yeah, so it's just interesting that because something about the quarters, I remember there was a certain point in my life where I said, I don't have a proper relationship with money. I need to learn the value of a quarter.
Yeah. Well, I definitely learned the value of a quarter.
Learned the value of a quarter. Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
story, Jonathan.
Yeah.
That's great.
Um, but I think, you know, in that time period, I really learned to hone the craft and become a stronger producer. And I think one of the advantages to short form is it's just always different. You know, this week you're doing this, another you're doing something else, and we're always, you know, we're always underfunded. We don't have enough time. So it was always just about trying to be creative. There was a group who had won, there was a cinematographer who had won an award in Europe, and the prize was a camera package and a couple bucks to go make a short film. And they came from Germany to New York and somehow found me, and we were making this short film, and they really wanted a helicopter shot over Manhattan. And there was no way we could afford that. But there is a tram that runs from Manhattan to Roosevelt Island, which is, you know, a little island that sits between Queens and Manhattan. And for the price of a, you know, MetroCard swipe, back then it was tokens, you could ride it. And so we put the camera up there, and it looks like a helicopter shot.
Wow.
And so just developing over time, I think I got a reputation of being a creative producer.
Uh-huh.
And so then more and more, I would start to be partnered with you know, untraditional directors. Kanye wanted to direct something, or Beyonce wanted to direct something. I might be paired with someone like that to help them realize their vision.
That's super interesting. So people who they've already achieved their own level of creative, I mean, I think of them both as creative geniuses, but then they want to try film. So they need to work with somebody who's much more
Help them
experienced.
realize their vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's really an important part of filmmaking, I think, is this philosophy of one vision. And that's the director's vision. You need to get everybody on board with the same idea. Otherwise it's kind of doomed for failure. And
Mm.
so a lot of times that's taking your ego out of it, and really just being creative and trying to help realize someone's vision. And so, you know, many times there's things that you can't do. And it's important as a producer to say, okay, well, we can't do this, but what about this? What about this? We could try this instead. What if we change this like this? And, you know, ultimately they've got to subscribe to something, and then hopefully can move forward. But it's all about helping realize the vision.
And I'm not sure off the top of my head what year the Lemonade tour was and the Lemonade film, but by that time I think you had already been working with Beyonce for many years, right? And
Yeah.
all had
Yes.
developed that relationship. And one of the things about Lemonade that you told me was that there was a lot of brand involvement, and I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit, because I think that's super interesting piece for filmmakers to think about is the way that brands can be involved.
Yeah, I think that's changing in general. And, you know, you look at the success of you know, all of these IP based films, you know, whether it's Barbie or now the He-Man is coming out, G.I. Joe, they've made all these movies. You know, we've seen these brands, even there was that great movie about the beginning of Nike and signing Michael Jordan.
Right.
So I think there's a very natural way that brands are embracing content, and I think that'll continue. I think more and more you'll see even TV shows that are sponsored by brands, and you might not even realize that a brand is behind it.
Right.
But that show might answer a problem that they have. For example, I saw an interview with it was the CEO of Ford recently, and he was saying there's a huge shortage of female mechanics. They cannot find them. There's just a huge shortage, and they want more women in that space. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw one of those car companies get behind a show about a group of female mechanics, because it offers an opportunity to shift the zeitgeist in order to help them with you know an issue they may be having. So
Yeah. And you're not talking about, you know, product placement, where I remember years ago seeing a kids film and literally seeing one of the actors holding up a product, and I was just like,
yeah,
this is terrible. You're talking about more where a
more
brand,
integrated.
huh?
Yeah, more integrated.
Yeah, well, even though you're talking about a brand that's not even in the show, or
Yeah.
that's more to do with a brand getting into culture in a way, like you just said about the zeitgeist, and you know, that seems to me to be something I haven't seen before. You know, that a brand isn't even on the credits.
Yeah, and I don't know if you'll even realize it when you do see it. And I think that's part of the point. And it's hard to wrap your head around sometimes because it's a very untraditional model. But
Mhm.
some of these big brands really see the value in getting involved with the culture like that. So I think we'll see it more and more and more and more. Uh,
Mhm. And does that also come from both your, like your side working in commercials and then also in filmmaking? It seems like it's a natural blending.
I think it's helped me understand the concept for sure, and understand the value in it. And so it's I think it's newer, and we have two shows in development right now that have brand involvement like that, and we'll see. You know, we're right at the front of it, so we'll see how it shakes out. But we're really optimistic about the model, and think that we'll see more and more of it going forward.
Who's driving the conversation? Is it the brand that's driving the conversation, or is it the project that's which way, which is the chicken and which is the egg?
I think a lot of it in coming out of Hollywood is actually spearheaded by one very visionary producer
Oh,
named Michael Sugar, who produced Spotlight and many other great films. And so there's an article, you could track it down. It's in Fast Company. I think it's called Your Brand is Barbie. And he talks a lot about it. And he's kind of really right at the front of it, and trying to introduce more and more brands to the idea.
yeah, I read that article after you told me about it, Michael Sugar, in Variety, and it's just such an interesting concept. So I recently watched Fly Me to the Moon, and I know that there was a certain point when you started working very closely with Scarlett Johansson, which
Mhm.
is an amazing thing. What is the story behind that? How did that partnership get going?
That partnership started I think maybe 16 years ago. And it was a music video that Scarlett wanted to direct. And you know, being in the position that I was and having a reputation for working with untraditional directors and helping them realize their vision, a record label actually partnered her and I, and we just clicked really well. And she's a fantastic filmmaker, really understood the process of filmmaking, and that just started an on and off again thing for a few years, where every once in a while she would get the opportunity to direct something and she would call me to produce it with her. And then I think maybe 7 years ago, she had called me and said that she wanted to start her production company and would I partner with her? And so I jumped at it. And so Fly Me to the Moon is the first movie to come out under our company. We have another film that's coming out in the fall called Eleanor the Great, which Scarlett directed. That's really a funny, poignant, moving story, kind of a love letter to New York too, and about a multi-generational friendship. Our lead actress is June Squibb, who's 95 years old. And our second lead, I think, is in her early 20s. And the unlikely friendship that forms between them. So
that's wonderful. So Scarlett is obviously creative on many, many levels, because there's the acting, the producing, the directing, and running a production company is that's its own creative piece, right? So I think a lot of my clients, you know, they dream of working with A-listers, and what are some of the ways that a filmmaker can prepare to work with somebody who's really very much a celebrity and very well known? What are the kind of things they need to think about before they get involved in something like that?
yeah, I think that the thing to do is just to develop your craft and be confident in what you're doing. I think, you know, having worked with a lot of celebrities, I think my longevity in those relationships, many of which have spanned, you know, now over 10 years,
Right.
it just never, it was always just about the work. What are we doing? How do we do it? What's the best way to do it? How can I be additive to this? And you know, there's always curveballs, whether the creative lead on the project is a director of a short film or a global superstar. There's always going to be those curveballs that come in. And yeah, I've been in the situation where we've prepared weeks for a production, and the night before the shoot, Ben called in and said, "Hey, I think we should do this instead," and it's completely different. And you know, the reaction is, "Okay, well, we can't do this yet. We're gonna need you know, a few days to put this together. This we could do tomorrow. This we could do tomorrow. What if we did this like this? We could do that, and you know, in a couple days." And I think it's my advice to all the younger producers that work for me as well is, you know, live in the solution. Be about the solution. Identifying the problem doesn't help anybody. Anybody can point out problems. Point out solutions, point out options, figure out how to get it done. So I think, you know, as long as you're doing that and you know, are confident and capable and have done your own work to lead you to whatever position you find yourself in, you're fine. And these celebrities are really just like anybody else. And one thing that I have found over these years is that 99% of the time, these people aren't in these positions for no reason. They're workaholics, they're perfectionists, they are tireless in their pursuit of something great. And that's why they're celebrities. It's you know, it's not random.
Right. Yes. The thing that I think that I suspect filmmakers wouldn't necessarily be prepared for when it comes to dealing with celebrities might very well be that they are regular human beings. And I can imagine, you know, when for Scarlett, say, that there was a moment when for her being a new director would have been something that was a challenge, exciting, but that would be something that she would want to have somebody like you to be able to support her through a new experience like that. You know, and I can imagine there's even more pressure because on the one hand she's a global superstar, but then on the other hand she's new at doing this thing.
Yeah, but I think, you know, it's I think there's an element of fearlessness involved for sure. I think you've got to be willing to take the risk. I think in any art, any work, any kind of sector of art, whether it's filmmaking or drawing or dance or anything, you have to be, or acting, you have to be able and willing to put yourself out there. And oftentimes that's the most terrifying part. It's not making it, it's actually putting your stuff out there.
Yeah.
You know, you'll never feel so exposed as when you create something and then open it up for others to criticize. But I think, you know, whether it's Scarlett directing her first film or a music video director who's going to jump into feature films, they're not coming with no experience. They're coming with years of experience.
Right.
Even if it's in a different capacity, they understand filmmaking. They understand the process, and so you know, I think the best thing anybody can do is to just do it. You know, if you want to be a filmmaker, you want to direct, start directing. No one is going to hand you the opportunity. It just doesn't happen. You have to create your own opportunities. So if you want to direct something,
Yes. Yes.
take your phone, get some software to edit. Some of it comes stock on computers. Teach yourself how to cut and start playing and start making stuff, and that will give you the confidence to move to the next level. And but you got
I
to keep doing
also,
it.
when you were talking about, you know, being a producer and helping further somebody's vision, I also get the impression that you're not very easily, you seem very unflappable.
Yes, I think that's an important
Another important
trait
skill.
to have. Yeah. I try not to get too excited or too upset about anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because either of those can lead to big letdowns. Um, and again, I think it's okay. Here's the reality. How do I get out of this? What's the solution? What are the different ways I can get out of this? But it always comes back to living in the solution and you know, trying to figure out different ways to do something.
I'm going to open it up for questions, but I have one last question, which is with Fly Me to the Moon. What was it about that project that was exciting for Scarlett Johansson? What did she really like about that project?
Well, at first she didn't.
Oh, she didn't.
It was there's a guy named Keenan Flynn who's a very close collaborator of mine, and part of our company since the very beginning. And he came in one day and he said, you know the broadcast of the moon landing? What if everything you heard was real and everything you saw was fake? And that kind of sparked it. And so we started developing it. He'd worked on this idea a little bit with somebody else previously, but we started kind of batting around some ideas, and then we brought it to Scarlett, and she said, "You guys are crazy, but if you see it, go for it." And so we kept going, and we found a writer who had written 2 spec scripts. She'd never actually been paid to write anything before.
Oh.
And we took a chance and brought her in. And then you know, myself, Keenan, and Rose Gilroy, who's the writer, spent many months and many drafts, just trying to find like the best version of this. And eventually we felt like we got somewhere with it, and we sent the script to Scarlett, and she came in the next day and she had it in her hand and she said, I want to say it like this. And so we knew we had her.
Already working on it. She was already working on the role.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic role. Fantastic.
But
We're gonna
we
actually
created that role for her. You know,
yes.
we thought that would be a great part for her to play. And so,
You know, I was gonna go ahead and play the trailer, and I think I'm not going to. I'm just gonna open it up for questions because everybody can see the trailer. But it's amazing. And just so you know, Jonathan, the very next day after I watched the film, which was on Sunday, on Monday, I had a meeting with the Challenger Learning Academy, which was started by the astronauts who wanted to do something to both teach STEM and bring more kids in, but to memorialize the astronauts who died in the Challenger disaster. I thought that was like a really amazing
yeah,
little, you know. So all right. So does anybody have a question? Yes, Paris, come on down.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Paris Moore. I'm an independent filmmaker. I was blessed to have won Sundance and been nominated for an Emmy and different things of that nature. I loved your story about how you started off in the beginning, you and your friends, and you grabbed whatever camera you could get and you would shoot whatever you could shoot. That reminds me of the early days when I was doing that too. Me and my friends would get together and it was wonderful. Now I'm at the point where I would like to shoot my own film. And when I'm ready, of course, we use Joanne's help, you know, as soon as I'm ready to do that. But do you find this a little different now to, with very little budget, to get people together and produce something? Or, you know, in your experience, do you see a difference? And do you think that digital filmmaking might have made that more difficult or even better?
I think, you know, rallying people around your vision is always going to be the challenge. But if you're a good salesperson and it's a great idea, then you will find those people who are willing to do it. And I think you can, I think it's amazing what you can actually get away with and how little you can do a lot. I mean, you're a working, you know, accomplished filmmaker. Like sometimes I feel the machine gets so big and there's so much crew and there's so much equipment and often I just wish we could strip it all down and really go with what's the smallest version of this that we can do. And a lot of times the smallest version is the fastest version. It's gives you the most time to experiment and play. And so I actually think digital has been the great equalizer in the industry. And there was a lot of fear at the beginning because you know, it was such a threshold to get into it. Film was expensive. Processing film was expensive. Those cameras were expensive. But so I think when digital first came out, people were scared. Well, if everybody can get a camera, you know, am I going to be able to work? And you know, the reality is, not that many people just go do it or strive to do it well. And so I think it's really, you know, democratized the everyone's ability to go participate in this field. And so and there's advantages, I think, to all the different cameras and stuff. I did a TV commercial a couple years ago where we shot on, it was brand new RE65 camera. It was like one of the first ones. This is an IMAX camera. So this is what you're shooting on this to project on IMAX screens. We shot the whole thing. We edited the whole thing. And the director was watching it down towards the end, and it did not feel right to him. It felt too crisp. It felt too perfect. So he took out his iPhone and he shot the screen on his iPhone, and that's the commercial that aired. It's
Oh.
so it does, and you know, world famous photographer and everything. It just matters what it makes you feel, and it doesn't matter. You know, I think try to get away from all the baggage of I need this and this and this and this. Probably don't.
I'm going to say you're one of the few people in the industry who said that. As I was trying to produce other projects in the past, people like actors or even sports guys, they'd always say, I need $30 billion. I need all this stuff. And I'm always like, what? I'm independent. We could do this for much, much less and make it easier to work with instead of trying to make it too complicated.
Yeah. And I think on the business side, and something I've learned, especially, I've produced a bunch of docs over the years, and I'm producing a couple right now. You have to be careful what you spend, because the reality is, you know, there's a threshold for what people will spend to buy them too. And you don't want to spend more than what the industry will bear to buy something like that. So you know, the great success stories are always, you know, the movie that was made for so little and then sold for more. And so, you know, that's something to always think about too. It's hard to make $100 million at the box office right now, or more. And so, you know, if you can make something for less and have it resonate with people, that's a win.
See, that sounds just like I always sound, right? It's like, how can we make a movie for this amount so we can sell it for that amount? Thanks so much. So good to see you, Paris. Carlton.
Howdy. Couple of questions. What was the budget? How many shooting days? And describe the decision to...
Carlton,
Yes.
don't you know you're not supposed to ask what the budget is of a film?
Some of it's public, so the public stuff I could talk about. Carlton, which film are you talking about? The Fly Me to the Moon?
Yes.
Ooh. That was over $100 million. That movie.
It looked it. It looked
and I think we shot 50 something days, I believe. I believe some
Okay.
of
Well, you had to tell the story of the Apollo 11, and then you had to also tell the story of the making of the film.
Yeah, and I think, you know, period stuff is always going to be more expensive. Always, because the costumes and the hair and the cars, and, you know, a film like that we were trying to give it so much scale. You know, there's a lot of visual effects in that film. Some you probably realize, probably a lot of others you don't. You know, if anyone's seen that film, The Control Room, we had to build that. That was a big set, probably the biggest set I think I've ever been involved with. And everything had to be period accurate, and you know, the headsets back then, you can't find those headsets. So, but we did find the company who made those headsets, and they still had the molds, and so we got them to remake them after all those years. And that's also working in a studio model. So, you know, inherently it's going to be more money because of that. So,
right.
Can you describe...
Thank you for your question, Carlton. I'm going to go to the next question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, Carlton.
Sam, what is your question? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it was great talk. I'll be quick. I was just curious about the brand partnership thing you talked about. I have a film that is it's about a WNBA former basketball player, and the script has, you know, gotten great, you know, feedback. We've gotten into some cast and things, but one of the biggest things I wanted to do is try to partner with someone in the WNBA, especially since that's really blowing up right now. And you know, and also maybe a production company that's sort of interested in that. So it's got a social justice / WNBA vibe, and it's shot in a prison, mostly basketball in prison. but I thought that would be a great fit. And I've tried to pursue the WNBA and they're just totally unresponsive. I even have a former WNBA player who's on our, in our pitch deck, who's helping us. They don't even respond to her. I'm
Wow.
just wondering, like, what do you, yeah, I know. I don't know if I'm just getting to the wrong executives or what, but I'm just wondering if you need guidance in that way or.
I made a film called Game Change Game. That was a documentary. And we partnered with not the NBA, but with the players union. So it was that was our way in. There are brands out there that are specifically financing sports stories and are actively looking for things. Dick's Sporting Goods, I don't know if you have those where you live, but that company is financing sports stories right now. That might be a good for you to check out.
Okay.
Wow, what a great tip.
I would say keep pushing though, and I'm not sure if the players union, if there's a players union for the WNBA, but there's never been a better time to tell a story set in that world.
I know. That's what I think. We did go to the players union, but I'll try them again. They also like tried to set a meeting and then they were very flaky about it. So maybe I'll push with them again.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if there's anything your presentation and any there's got to be an outlet. I would say keep pushing on that.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of my instinct, but thank you.
Good to meet you, Sam. Sounds like a great project.
Thank you.
Chris, I think this is going to be our last question. Good to see you, Chris.
Yes, good to see you, Joanne. Thank you. I used Joanne's consulting service and I've been very pleased with her over the years. And I'm a faith-based producer, filmmaker. So anyway, you're working with highly driven, highly creative people. How do you manage them on set? I mean, they have a lot of people pulling for their attention and you have a whole crew there, but they're getting called away for a quick presentation or something. How do you manage that to keep them, focused on what needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember doing a job once with 50 Cent. And we're shooting a music video, and on the set of the music video, we also shot a car commercial. He also had 2 interviews going on for other shows. We had 6 things happening all at the same time. And as he always said, I'm built for this. And I think it's just about the task at hand. Any film shoot, as I'm sure is it can be expensive. I mean, time is money. The meter's money, and so there should be the expectation of a certain level of professionalism that we're here to do this job, and we're this is what you're here to do, and you do it. And I think, in my experience, the higher up you get with these people, the more serious they are about it all, and the more on time they are and prepared they are, and it's a job and a privilege, I think, to have this kind of a job, and oftentimes those are the people who are getting paid the most out of everybody. And so at least in my experience, I've found that those are the people who are taking it very seriously and are pretty focused. Of course, there's distractions, of course, all of that, but it's just about doing your best job to keep the train on the tracks, and gently nudging. I mean, I have been in situations where there were things beyond the control of, an artist is sick, like really sick, and still is trying to perform, and it's not working, and the clock is running and the meter's running, and and in those situations, I mean, depending on what it is, if there's a record label, for example, in that scenario, we went to them and said, hey guys, look, it's not working. Like, you have to you have to make up for this. It's not his fault. He's sick. It's not our fault. We're here. We're ready. It's the situation. And so, you know, if we're going to keep doing this, you have to pay for it. Or if you don't have that entity that's overseeing it, you know, sometimes you have to be the one to shut things down too. And whether that's for safety, I've been in situations where, you know, somebody, an actor or an artist has wanted to go do something, and it's not safe and it's not okay. And at the end of the day, you know, and we've seen, unfortunately, in these tragic occurrences, whether it was on the train trestle or that AC was tragically lost, or on the Rust film where two people were shot. You know, the buck stops with the filmmakers, the producer and the director, and so it's important that you keep your wits about you and know when to stop things too. Whether it's because it's not working or not safe or whatever, but it's you know, those decisions are the most important decisions you can make, I think, on set.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Good to
Nice to
see
meet
you.
Mhm.
Good to see you. All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. I just am so honored to have your time and your wisdom to share with filmmakers. It's really amazing that you would take this time. I can't even imagine how you have an hour.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you guys. I met Joanne because I signed up for this as well. And you know, having just coming off of a, you know, 9-figure movie, because it's, you know, I know there's more that I can learn. And so, you know, it's keep learning.
Yeah, keep learning, keep learning. Absolutely. Thank you so much for modeling that.